The morning sun cast long shadows across the BeltLine's paved trail as Sarah Collins adjusted her radio and checked her watch. Another routine patrol through Atlanta's most popular recreational corridor, or so she thought. Max, her 6-year-old Belgian Malinois, had been moving with his usual confident stride until they reached the section near the old Ponce City Market overpass. Then he stopped, not slowed down, stopped completely. "Come on, boy," Sarah urged, giving his leash a gentle tug. Max didn't budge. His muscular frame remained rigid, ears perked forward, nose working the air with an intensity that made Sarah's instincts kick in. In 6 years of partnership, she'd learned to trust when Max's behavior shifted from routine to focused. The Belgian Malinois planted his paws firmly on the asphalt, his dark brown eyes fixed on something only he could perceive. Sarah had seen this stance before, during drug raids, missing person searches, even that time they'd uncovered the weapons cache in Piedmont Park. Max's entire body language screamed that he'd detected something significant. "What is it, partner?" Sarah crouched beside him, running her hand along his neck. His muscles were tense, coiled like a spring. She scanned the area around them. Joggers passed by, cyclists called out friendly warnings, families pushed strollers along the tree-lined path. Everything appeared normal, but Max's instincts had never failed them. A jogger approached from behind, her breathing labored as she slowed to a walk. The woman looked to be in her 30s, wearing expensive running gear and wireless earbuds that she pulled out as she got closer. "Excuse me, officer," the woman called out, her voice carrying a hint of concern. "I don't mean to bother you, but I've been running this route every morning for 3 weeks, and there's been this weird smell right around here." Sarah stood, her attention immediately focused. "What kind of smell? Chemical, maybe. Sweet, but wrong, you know? Like cleaning products mixed with something else." The jogger wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "My husband thinks I'm crazy, but it's definitely not normal. I actually started holding my breath when I run through this section." Max whined low in his throat, a sound Sarah recognized as his alert signal. His nose pointed toward a section of overgrown bushes about 20 feet from the main trail, where the vegetation grew thick and wild. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Max only made that sound when he detected something significant. "How long have you noticed this smell?" Sarah asked, pulling out her notepad. "About 2 weeks, maybe a little more. It's strongest in the mornings, before the sun gets too high. Some days it's barely there. Other days it's so strong I actually gagged." The woman shifted nervously. "Is everything okay? Should I be worried about running here?" Sarah studied the woman's genuine concern, then looked back at Max, who was now pulling steadily toward the overgrown area. "We're going to check it out. What's your name in case we need to follow up?" "Jennifer Walsh. I live in Virginia Highland. Run this route every day at 7:30. She glanced at her fitness watch. "I'm already behind schedule. But if you need anything else, thank you for letting me know, Ms. Walsh. We'll take it from here." Sarah handed her a business card. "If you notice anything else unusual, please call." Jennifer nodded and continued her run, leaving Sarah alone with her increasingly agitated partner. Max pulled toward the vegetation, his movements deliberate and controlled. Sarah followed, pushing through low branches and kudzu vines that had grown wild over the abandoned drainage area. The smell hit her almost immediately, sharp, acrid, definitely chemical. Her training kicked in as she pulled out her radio, trying to identify the scent. It reminded her of the meth labs they'd busted in rural Georgia, but with an underlying sweetness that made her stomach turn. "Dispatch, this is Unit K97. I need backup at the BeltLine near Ponce City Market. Possible hazardous material situation. Also requesting hazmat team for chemical assessment." Max had found something hidden beneath a pile of old construction debris and dead leaves. Sarah knelt beside him, careful not to disturb anything while trying to get a better look. What she saw made her blood run cold. Plastic containers, rubber tubing, glass beakers, and dark stains on the concrete that definitely didn't belong in a public park. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind Max's ears, while maintaining her focus on the scene. "What else do you smell?" Max circled the area methodically, his nose working overtime. He paused at 3 different spots, each time looking back at Sarah with that intense focus that told her they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than dumped chemistry equipment. His behavior reminded her of their biggest fentanyl bust last year. The same focused energy, the same careful alerting pattern. Sarah took photos with her phone while waiting for backup, documenting everything without touching anything. The setup looked professional, not like some amateur's backyard experiment. Someone had invested serious money in this operation. As sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah realized their quiet morning patrol had just become something else entirely. Max pressed against her leg, still alert, but offering comfort. A reminder that whatever they'd found, they'd face it together. She looked down at her partner, whose tail gave a single wag, despite his continued vigilance. "Looks like we're not going home early today, are we, boy?" Max's response was to return his attention to the hidden lab, his duty clear. Whatever was buried in this seemingly innocent patch of Atlanta parkland, he wasn't leaving until every trace was found. The hazmat team's yellow suits moved through the overgrown area like alien figures against the morning sky. Sarah watched from the perimeter as they carefully extracted containers and equipment from what was clearly a sophisticated drug laboratory. Max sat beside her, his attention split between the activity and something else. Something that kept drawing his gaze back to the original spot where he'd first stopped. "Preliminary tests confirm fentanyl residue," Detective Rodriguez called out, approaching with his tablet. "High concentration, pharmaceutical grade. This isn't street-level stuff, Collins. Someone's cooking serious product here." Sarah nodded, but her focus remained on Max. He'd been restless since the hazmat team arrived, whining softly and pulling toward the trail. "There's more," she said, trusting her partner's instincts. "Max isn't done yet." "What do you mean?" "Watch him." Sarah loosened Max's leash slightly. Immediately, the dog moved back toward the main trail, nose to the ground. He walked purposefully along the pavement for about 50 yards, then stopped again, this time near a storm drain entrance, partially hidden by overgrown ivy. Max's alert posture returned, ears forward, body tense, that low whine that meant business. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the pattern. "He's tracking a scent trail. Someone moved product through here." Rodriguez joined them as Sarah carefully pushed aside the vegetation covering the storm drain. The metal grate had been recently disturbed, scratches in the rust, fresh tool marks on the bolts. "This connects to the old Marta tunnel system," Rodriguez said, checking his city planning app. "Abandoned since the early 2000s. Perfect highway for moving drugs without being seen," Sarah muttered. She looked down at Max, who was now focused on the drain opening with laser intensity. "How much of this tunnel system runs under Atlanta?" "Miles. Goes all the way downtown. Connects to the subway system in some places." Rodriguez made notes on his tablet. "We'll need to coordinate with transit police and maybe ATF if this is as big as it looks." Max suddenly barked, a sharp, urgent sound that made both officers step back. Sarah had learned to read her partner's different vocalizations, and this one meant immediate danger or discovery. She knelt beside him, watching as he focused on something beyond the drain opening. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" The answer came in the form of footsteps echoing from inside the tunnel. Someone was down there, moving fast. Sarah drew her weapon while Rodriguez called for additional units. Max's hackles rose as the footsteps grew closer, then suddenly stopped. Silence stretched for 30 seconds before they heard the sound of metal clanging against concrete, followed by rapid footsteps moving away in the opposite direction. Whoever was in there had spotted them and was making an escape. "We need to map these tunnels," Sarah said, holstering her weapon, "and we need to do it fast before they move everything." Max was already moving again, this time heading south along the BeltLine. His nose worked the air constantly, and Sarah realized he was following an invisible trail that only he could detect. Every 50 yards or so, he'd pause and alert to another drainage access point or maintenance entrance. "He's showing us their distribution network," Sarah told Rodriguez, who was struggling to keep up while coordinating with dispatch. Look at the pattern. Every access point leads to a different neighborhood. Virginia Highland, Midtown, Downtown Connector. They've got the whole city mapped out. By the time they'd walked a quarter mile, Max had identified 6 potential access points. Each one showed signs of recent use: disturbed vegetation, fresh scratches on metal grates, areas where the usual debris had been cleared away. "This is incredible," Rodriguez panted, mopping sweat from his forehead. "How does he know where to look?" "Scent molecules can travel for miles underground, especially in enclosed spaces like tunnels," Sarah explained, watching Max work. "Fentanyl has a distinctive chemical signature. He's basically following a roadmap painted in molecules." Max stopped again, this time at what looked like an ordinary maintenance shed near the Ponce City Market parking area. The building was unremarkable, grey concrete, single door, small windows painted black. But Max's reaction was anything but ordinary. He was practically vibrating with excitement, his tail rigid, every muscle focused on that building. "This is it," Sarah said quietly. "This is their main distribution point." As if to confirm her assessment, Max began his specific alerting sequence. 3 sharp barks followed by sitting perfectly still, eyes locked on the target. It was the same sequence he'd used during their biggest drug busts, the one that had never been wrong. Rodriguez was already on his radio, calling for surveillance teams, when they noticed the black SUV parked behind the building. Tinted windows, no license plate visible from their angle, engine running. "They're moving product right now," Sarah whispered. "We need to—" The SUV's doors opened simultaneously, and 3 men in dark clothing emerged. Even from a distance, Sarah could see they were armed. The men moved with military precision toward the maintenance shed, clearly comfortable with their surroundings. Max growled low in his throat, a sound Sarah rarely heard from him. It meant he sensed immediate threat, and his protective instincts were engaging. She made a decision that would change everything. "We're following that vehicle," she told Rodriguez. "Whatever operation they're running, it's bigger than just this tunnel network. Max is telling us there's more to find." As the SUV pulled away from the shed, Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with a major case. Max pressed against her leg, his way of saying he was ready for whatever came next. She looked down at her partner, whose eyes were already tracking the SUV's movement. "Good boy. Let's see where this leads us." Sarah maintained a careful distance as the black SUV wound through Atlanta's morning traffic. Max sat alert in the passenger seat, his eyes tracking the vehicle ahead, while his nose worked constantly at the partially open window. Something about his behavior reminded Sarah of their first major case together, the warehouse incident that had forged their unbreakable partnership. 3 years ago, Warehouse District. Sarah had been partnered with Max for only 6 months when they'd been called to investigate reports of suspicious activity in an abandoned textile factory. Max had been young then, eager, but still learning to communicate his findings effectively. When he'd alerted to a section of concrete flooring that looked identical to everything around it, Sarah had initially dismissed it as a training error. "Come on, Max. There's nothing there," she'd said, tugging his leash. But Max had planted himself exactly as he'd done this morning on the BeltLine, immovable, insistent, his entire body radiating certainty. Detective Murphy, her partner at the time, had been less patient. "Collins? We don't have all day. The dog's confused." But something in Max's eyes had made Sarah pause. The same intense focus she'd seen this morning, the same unwavering conviction. Against Murphy's protests, she'd called for ground-penetrating radar. What they'd found beneath that concrete had been Atlanta's largest human trafficking operation. 37 victims held in underground cells, a network that had been operating for over 5 years. Max had saved 37 lives that day because Sarah had learned to trust his instincts over human skepticism. The SUV turned onto Peachtree Street, heading toward downtown. Sarah radioed their position to Rodriguez while keeping her eyes on the vehicle. Still southbound on Peachtree, they're not trying to lose us. Either they don't know we're here, or they don't care. Max whined softly, a sound that brought Sarah back to the present. He was staring intently at the SUV, but his body language had shifted. The alert posture remained, but now there was something else. A tension she recognized as fear. "What is it, boy?" Sarah reached over to scratch behind his ears. "What are you picking up?" The answer came as her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop following or the dog dies first." Sarah's blood ran cold. She immediately pulled into a parking space and scanned the area around them. The SUV had disappeared into traffic, but somewhere nearby, someone was watching them. Max's fear made sense now. He'd detected the threat before Sarah had even realized they'd been made. Her phone rang. "Rodriguez. Collins, we ran the plate on that SUV. Vehicle's registered to a company called Phantom Logistics. Guess who owns it? Tell me." "Vincent Delacroix. Ever heard of him?" The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Vincent Phantom Delacroix, a legend in law enforcement circles, but not the good kind. The man who'd evaded federal task forces for over a decade, always staying one step ahead of investigation. If Delacroix was involved, this case had just become exponentially more dangerous. "Sarah, you there?" "Yeah, I'm here. What else do we know about him?" "Plenty, none of it good. Born in New Orleans, military background, special forces dishonorably discharged for reasons that are still classified. He's been linked to drug operations from Miami to Chicago, but nobody's ever been able to make anything stick. Guys like smoke." Max shifted restlessly in his seat, his attention now divided between the street and something else. Sarah followed his gaze to see another black SUV parked across the street, its occupants clearly watching them. Her heart rate spiked as she realized they were surrounded. "Rodriguez, I need immediate backup at Peachtree and 5th. Multiple hostiles, and Max and I are compromised." But before Rodriguez could respond, Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from the same unknown number. "Officer Collins." The voice was smooth, cultured, with a slight Creole accent. "My name is Vincent Delacroix. I believe you've been looking for me." "Where are you?" Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon. "Close enough to see that beautiful dog of yours." "Max, isn't it? Belgian Malinois, 6 years old, trained at Lackland Air Force Base. Quite the impressive record. Piedmont Park weapons cache, the underground trafficking ring, that warehouse case that made your career." The fact that Delacroix knew Max's history sent chills down Sarah's spine. This wasn't a random encounter. They'd been researched, targeted. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something, Officer Collins. What you found this morning was meant to be found. That laboratory, those tunnels, they're what you might call a demonstration, a small taste of what I'm capable of." Max suddenly barked sharply, his attention focused on the alley beside their patrol car. Sarah saw movement in the shadows, figures positioning themselves with military precision. "You see, I've been watching your work for quite some time," Delacroix continued. "Your partnership with Max is impressive, but it's also made you predictable. You trust that dog's nose more than your own instincts, and that's going to be your downfall." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. I've studied every case you've worked, every move you've made. I know that right now Max is alerting to my men in the alley. I know that in about 30 seconds you're going to call for backup again. And I know that none of it will matter because I'm already 3 steps ahead of you." Sarah's radio crackled with Rodriguez's voice, but the words were garbled, filled with static. Someone was jamming their communications. "The beautiful thing about fentanyl, Officer Collins, is that it's odorless to humans at the concentrations I use. But dogs with noses like Max's, they can detect it even when it's mixed with masking agents. That makes him incredibly valuable to someone in my line of work." The implication hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. "You want Max?" "I want Max's expertise, yes, and I want you to stop interfering with my business. Consider this your only warning." The line went dead. Sarah immediately started the patrol car, but as she pulled into traffic, she noticed Max's behavior had changed again. Instead of focusing on external threats, he was staring intently at the BeltLine in the distance, his body pointing toward the original spot where they'd started their morning. "What is it, boy? What are you remembering?" Max's response was to whine softly, a sound that carried both determination and worry. Sarah realized that her partner wasn't just alerting to immediate dangers. He was trying to tell her something about the bigger picture, something that connected this morning's discovery to a larger pattern only he could perceive. As sirens finally wailed in the distance, Sarah made a decision that would define everything that followed. Whatever Delacroix was planning, whatever web they'd stumbled into, she and Max would see it through to the end. "Okay, partner," she said, reaching over to touch Max's head. "Show me what you remember." Sarah's apartment building had never felt like a fortress before, but as she checked the locks for the third time, she realized how exposed she and Max really were. It had been 6 hours since Delacroix's call, and every shadow seemed to hold potential threats. Max paced restlessly between the living room window and the front door, his protective instincts in overdrive. The knock came at exactly 9 p.m., 3 sharp raps followed by 2 soft ones. Sarah's hand moved to her service weapon as she approached the door, Max immediately positioning himself between her and the potential threat. "It's Rodriguez," came the familiar voice from the hallway. Sarah opened the door to find her partner looking haggard, a thick file folder tucked under his arm. "Tell me you have good news," she said, letting him in. "I have news. Whether it's good depends on your definition." Rodriguez settled into her kitchen chair while Max continued his patrol pattern. "I've been digging into Delacroix all afternoon. This guy's not just any drug dealer, Sarah. He's a ghost who's been building an empire." Rodriguez opened the file, revealing photographs, surveillance reports, and interconnected charts that looked like something from a federal task force. DEA's been tracking him for 8 years. FBI's had a joint task force dedicated to him for 5. He's suspected in operations across 12 states, but they've never been able to get close enough to build a case. How does someone stay invisible for that long? By being smarter than everyone chasing him. Look at this. Rodriguez pulled out a map of the southeastern United States marked with red pins. Every time law enforcement gets close, he shuts down the operation and moves. Charleston, Jacksonville, Birmingham, Memphis. He'll run a distribution network for 6 months, make millions, then vanish before anyone can connect him to it. Max suddenly stopped pacing and growled low in his throat, his attention focused on the window. Sarah immediately killed the lights and moved to look outside. A van was parked across the street that hadn't been there when Rodriguez arrived. "We've got company," Sarah whispered. Rodriguez joined her at the window, his hand moving to his weapon. "How long has that van been there?" "It wasn't there 10 minutes ago." Sarah watched as 2 figures emerged from the van, moving with the same military precision she'd seen earlier. "They found us." Max barked once, his danger alert, then moved to position himself between Sarah and the front door. His training was taking over, every instinct focused on protecting his partner. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. "Come outside. Bring the dog. Come alone." "Like hell," Rodriguez muttered, but Sarah was already thinking tactically. They want Max alive, which means they won't risk a firefight that could hurt him. But if we stay trapped in here, they'll find another way. Sarah moved to her bedroom, pulling tactical gear from her closet. "I'm going to give them what they want." "Sarah, that's insane." "No, it's strategic. Max and I work best when we're mobile, not trapped in a box." She clipped Max's tactical harness into place, checking his camera and communication systems. "Besides, I think I know what Max has been trying to tell me." Rodriguez looked confused, but Max's body language had shifted. The moment Sarah put on his working harness, his restless energy focused into professional calm. He was ready for action. "When we were at the BeltLine this morning, Max kept returning to that original spot. Even after we found the lab, even after we tracked the tunnel network, he wasn't just remembering. He was telling me that spot is the key to everything." Sarah's phone rang. Delacroix again. "Officer Collins. I trust you've seen my associates outside. What do you want?" "A simple trade. Your dog for information about a much larger problem than you realize. You see, I'm not the only one interested in that particular stretch of the BeltLine. What do you mean? There's another player in this game, someone who makes me look like a street-level dealer. The laboratory you found this morning? That was his operation, not mine. I was just providing security. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place. You're telling me you're not running this operation? I'm telling you that what you stumbled onto this morning is the tip of an iceberg that goes all the way to Washington. Federal contracts, black budget operations, experiments that would make your blood run cold. Your dog didn't just find a drug lab, he found a weapons testing site. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Weapons testing. That explained the sophisticated equipment, the military-grade precision of the setup, and if Max had detected it, fentanyl weaponization, she said quietly. Very good, Officer Collins. Your government has been experimenting with aerosol delivery systems, trying to create non-lethal crowd control weapons, except the concentrations they're testing aren't quite as non-lethal as advertised. Max whined softly, pressing against Sarah's leg. His behavior this morning suddenly made perfect sense. He hadn't just been alerting to drugs, he'd been alerting to chemical weapons. Why are you telling me this? Because whoever's running that program knows your dog can identify their testing sites. They've put a kill order on both of you. My offer to trade for Max isn't about acquiring him. It's about keeping him alive long enough to expose what's really happening. The sound of breaking glass came from Sarah's kitchen window. Smoke began filling the apartment as Rodriguez shouted a warning. Tear gas, but not the standard police variety. This had a sweet chemical smell that made Max recoil. They're testing it on you right now, Delacroix's voice continued through the phone. Modified CS gas with fentanyl additives, designed to incapacitate K9 units specifically. Sarah grabbed her gas mask and quickly fitted Max with his protective equipment. The smoke was getting thicker, and she could hear Rodriguez coughing despite his attempts to cover his nose and mouth. The van outside is your extraction, Delacroix said. Take it or die here. Your choice. Max looked up at Sarah through his protective eyewear, and she saw complete trust in his eyes. Whatever decision she made, he was ready to follow her lead. Rodriguez, we're moving, Sarah called out, heading for the door. Stay close and follow Max's lead. As they burst out of the apartment building, Sarah realized they weren't just running from Delacroix's men anymore. They were running toward a truth that someone in power desperately wanted to keep buried. Max pressed against her leg as they reached the van, his body telling her that the real hunt was just beginning. The van's interior was equipped like a mobile command center, screens displaying tunnel layouts and chemical detection readings. Vincent Delacroix sat across from Sarah, his expensive suit incongruous with the tactical equipment surrounding them. Max remained alert but calm, his training allowing him to assess the new environment while maintaining protective positioning. The main laboratory is 3 levels below the BeltLine, Delacroix explained, pointing to a 3D tunnel map on his tablet. Your morning discovery was just a mixing station. Child's play compared to what they're really doing down there. Sarah studied the schematics, noting the complex ventilation systems and multiple escape routes. How do you know all this? Because I was hired to provide security for what I thought was a pharmaceutical research project. Took me 3 months to realize I was protecting a weapons development program. Delacroix's expression darkened. When I tried to back out, they made it clear that wasn't an option. Rodriguez, still recovering from the gas attack, leaned forward. So you're telling us the federal government is developing chemical weapons in the middle of Atlanta? Not the federal government, a black ops division with connections to defense contractors and intelligence agencies. They've been using Phantom Logistics as a front, which means my name is all over their paperwork. If this goes public, I'm the fall guy. Max suddenly tensed, his ears perked toward the van's rear doors. Sarah recognized the alert immediately. He'd detected something specific, something that triggered his weapons-grade training. How close are we to the main site? Sarah asked. 2 blocks. Your dog's picking up the ventilation output. Delacroix watched Max with professional appreciation. Fentanyl aerosol at those concentrations creates a distinctive molecular signature. Most detection equipment can't identify it, but a nose like his. The van stopped in an industrial area near the old underground Atlanta complex. Delacroix's driver, a woman with military bearing, turned to face them. Perimeter is clear, but thermal imaging shows at least 12 hostiles inside the facility. Sarah checked her gear, while Max underwent his pre-mission routine, testing his protective equipment, checking his communication harness, settling into his operational mindset. 6 years of partnership had taught them both that survival depended on perfect coordination. The entrance is through a maintenance tunnel 50 yards from here, Delacroix said, handing Sarah a modified gas mask. Fair warning, what you're about to see down there will challenge everything you believe about your government. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and humid, filled with the sound of industrial ventilation systems. Max led the way, his nose working constantly as they descended deeper underground. Sarah could feel the weight of the city above them, tons of concrete and steel pressing down on the hidden world beneath Atlanta's streets. After 10 minutes of careful navigation, they reached a reinforced door marked with biohazard symbols. Delacroix produced a key card, but before he could use it, Max began his specific alert sequence, 3 sharp barks followed by perfect stillness. Motion sensors, Delacroix whispered. They know we're here. The door opened from the inside, revealing a figure in full hazmat gear. Mr. Delacroix, you're early, and you brought guests. Sarah recognized the voice. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a name she'd seen on CDC reports about biological weapons research. The woman's presence confirmed their worst fears about the scope of the operation. Dr. Chen, meet Officer Collins and her partner Max. They're the ones who discovered your little chemistry experiment this morning. Dr. Chen's attention immediately focused on Max. The K9 unit that's been causing problems. We've been wondering how to neutralize his detection capabilities. You mean kill him? Sarah said flatly. I mean adapt our formulations to avoid K9 detection. Max has cost us 3 months of research and development. Dr. Chen gestured for them to follow her into the facility. Perhaps we can turn this setback into an opportunity. The laboratory complex was massive, stretching far beyond what the tunnel maps had indicated. Rows of sophisticated equipment filled multiple chambers, with technicians in hazmat suits monitoring chemical processes that Sarah couldn't begin to understand. The scale of the operation was staggering. Max's behavior became increasingly agitated as they moved deeper into the facility. His alerts were constant now, overwhelming his usual disciplined communication. Every surface, every piece of equipment, every breath of air triggered his detection instincts. This is where they've been perfecting the aerosol delivery system, Delacroix explained quietly. Crowd control weapons that can incapacitate entire city blocks without causing permanent damage, theoretically. Sarah watched technicians loading canisters into what looked like modified fire suppression systems. Theoretically, the dosage calculations have been imprecise. Early field tests resulted in 17 fatalities that were covered up as overdose deaths. Dr. Chen turned back to address them, her voice carrying academic detachment. Acceptable losses in pursuit of a non-lethal weapon system that could revolutionize law enforcement and military operations. Officer Collins, surely you can appreciate the potential applications. Max suddenly lunged forward, his protective instincts engaging as he detected immediate threat. Sarah saw the technician reaching for something behind a control panel, a weapon or alarm, she couldn't tell which. "Max, down!" Sarah commanded, but her partner was already in motion. The Belgian Malinois moved with devastating precision, taking down the technician before he could complete whatever action he'd intended. The man's hazmat suit tore as he hit the ground, and Sarah caught a glimpse of military tattoos and special forces conditioning. So much for the non-violent approach, Delacroix muttered, drawing his weapon as alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Chen backed toward an emergency exit, her academic composure cracking. You have no idea what you're interfering with. This program has presidential authorization. Then the president needs to answer some questions, Sarah replied, moving to cover the main corridor while Max maintained position near the chemical processing equipment. Rodriguez appeared from a side passage, herding 3 technicians ahead of him. I found the main production area. Sarah, they've got enough weaponized fentanyl down here to take out half of Atlanta. Max barked urgently, his attention focused on a section of equipment that was beginning to vent vapor into the air. Sarah recognized the sound from their hazmat training, a containment breach, either accidental or intentional. They're trying to destroy the evidence, Delacroix said, checking his chemical detection device. And us with it. Sarah looked at Max, whose eyes reflected the same determination she felt. They'd come too far to let the truth disappear in a cloud of poison gas. Not if we can help it, she said, moving toward the main control systems. Max, show me which way out. Her partner's response was immediate, a purposeful movement toward a corridor they hadn't explored, his nose leading them toward clean air and safety. Whatever happened next, Sarah knew they'd face it together. Max's nose led them through a maze of service corridors as toxic vapor filled the laboratory behind them. Sarah could hear the hiss of emergency ventilation systems struggling to contain the chemical release, but her focus remained on her partner's confident navigation through the underground complex. Every turn he chose led them toward cleaner air and safety. There, Rodriguez pointed ahead to a maintenance ladder leading upward. Emergency exit to street level. But as they climbed, Sarah realized Max wasn't heading for the exit. Instead, he guided them through a connecting tunnel that led back toward the BeltLine, specifically back to the original spot where their investigation had begun 12 hours earlier. He's taking us in circles, Delacroix complained, but Sarah understood her partner's logic. No, he's taking us to the evidence, the real evidence. Sarah followed Max as he led them to a concealed access panel near the BeltLine trail. This is where they've been monitoring everything, the central hub for the entire operation. The hidden control room was smaller than the laboratory, but infinitely more important. Banks of computers monitored chemical levels throughout Atlanta's underground systems, while surveillance feeds showed dozens of potential deployment sites across the city. This wasn't just a weapons testing facility. It was a command center for chemical warfare against American citizens. Jesus, Rodriguez breathed, staring at the screens. They've been mapping deployment scenarios for the entire metro area. Dr. Chen's voice came through the facility's intercom system. Officer Collins, you have approximately 8 minutes before automatic containment protocols flood that area with enough aerosolized fentanyl to kill everyone inside. I suggest you reconsider your position. Sarah was already downloading files from the central computer, while Max stood guard at the entrance. How long do we need? She asked Rodriguez, who was copying surveillance footage onto portable drives. 5 minutes for the critical files, 10 for everything. We don't have 10. Sarah could hear the ventilation system cycling, preparing for whatever Dr. Chen had threatened. Max, find us another way out. Her partner immediately moved to a section of the wall that looked identical to everything around it, but his nose told him otherwise. He began pawing at what appeared to be solid concrete until Sarah noticed the hairline crack that outlined a hidden panel. The panel opened to reveal Dr. Chen herself, flanked by 2 armed operatives in tactical gear. I really hoped we could resolve this professionally, she said, her weapon trained on Max, but you've forced my hand. The evidence is already uploaded, Sarah lied, slowly moving to position herself between Dr. Chen and her partner. Kill us, and it automatically goes public. I doubt that, but just to be certain, Dr. Chen gestured to her operatives, who began moving to flank Sarah and Rodriguez. That's when Delacroix emerged from the laboratory corridor behind them, accompanied by a full FBI tactical team in chemical protection gear. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, weapons trafficking, and 17 counts of murder. The operatives raised their weapons, but Max was already in motion. 6 years of training and partnership with Sarah had honed his protective instincts to perfection. He took down the first operative with devastating efficiency, while Sarah disarmed Dr. Chen in a single fluid movement. The second operative managed to discharge his weapon, but the bullet went wide as Rodriguez tackled him to the ground. Within 30 seconds, the threat was neutralized, and the most dangerous chemical weapons program in American history was in federal custody. "How?" Dr. Chen demanded as FBI agents secured her in restraints. "Your partner Delacroix has been wearing a wire for the past 6 months," Special Agent Martinez explained, removing his helmet. "We've been building a case against your entire operation, but we needed access to the main facility and evidence of deployment capabilities." Sarah looked at Delacroix with new understanding. "You've been undercover this whole time. Federal task force, embedded deep cover. When Max found that first laboratory this morning, it accelerated our timeline by 6 months. We had to move fast before they relocated again." Max pressed against Sarah's leg, his way of asking if the mission was complete. Sarah knelt beside him, checking him over for injuries, while FBI agents secured the control room and began documenting evidence. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "You saved a lot of lives today." 3 hours later, as hazmat teams finished cleaning the underground facility and federal prosecutors prepared charges against 17 people in the conspiracy, Sarah and Max returned to the BeltLine trail where everything had started. The morning joggers were back, completely unaware of the chemical weapons facility that had been operating beneath their feet. Sarah watched Max sniff around the area where he'd first alerted, but his body language was relaxed now, satisfied that the threat was gone. "So what happens to us now?" Rodriguez asked, joining them as they walked the familiar patrol route. "Back to regular K9 duties, I suppose, though I suspect we'll be getting some interesting federal consulting requests." Sarah watched Max trot confidently ahead of them, his tail wagging for the first time all day. "The important thing is that Atlanta is safe." A familiar jogger approached from the opposite direction, Jennifer Walsh, the woman who'd first reported the strange chemical smell. She slowed as she recognized Sarah and Max. "Officer Collins, I heard on the news about some kind of environmental cleanup happening around here. Everything okay?" Sarah smiled, watching Max greet Jennifer with friendly curiosity instead of the alert tension he'd shown yesterday. "Everything's fine now, Ms. Walsh. Just some old industrial contamination that needed to be removed." "Well, I'm glad you took care of it. The air definitely smells cleaner today." Jennifer patted Max's head before continuing her run. "Thank you for keeping our community safe." As Jennifer jogged away, Sarah realized that was exactly what they'd done, kept their community safe. Not through dramatic shootouts or high-speed chases, but through the simple act of trusting her partner's nose and following where it led. Max looked up at her with those intelligent brown eyes, and Sarah could swear she saw satisfaction in his expression. His morning's work protecting the BeltLine was complete, but she knew he'd be ready tomorrow for whatever new challenges their partnership might face. "Come on, partner," she said, giving his leash a gentle tug. "Let's go home." For the first time in 24 hours, Max moved willingly away from the trail, his duty as guardian finally fulfilled.